The space station floated in the darkness near a dying red star. It was called Sentinel-7, and it belonged to the Galactic Union. The station had one job: watch over the young ones of the Krethax species while they learned to hunt and fight. The Krethax were tall creatures, about 7 feet high, with black shell-like skin that shined in the light. They had sharp claws and could move very fast. Everyone in the galaxy knew the Krethax were dangerous predators. Their young were called cubs, even though they were as big as adult humans. These cubs were supposed to be tough and mean just like their parents, but something was wrong. Commander Vexna stood in the control room and looked at the screens. She had 4 arms and blue skin. Her species, the Thelians, were good at running stations like this one. She watched the numbers on the screen and felt worried. The 12 Krethax cubs in the training area had not slept properly in 47 days. They walked around all the time, making angry sounds and hitting each other. They could not rest. A crystalline being named Kill worked next to her. Kill looked like a tall statue made of clear glass that changed colors when he talked. His species was very smart and could predict how animals would behave. "I have checked everything 3 times, Kill said. His body flashed yellow with confusion. "There is no reason for this. The temperature is correct. The food is correct. Everything is exactly as it should be. But the cubs will not sleep." Vexna tapped her fingers on the control panel. This was very bad. Krethax cubs needed deep sleep to grow properly. Without sleep, their brains would not develop right. The Krethax Council had already sent angry messages asking what was wrong. If the cubs failed to develop, it would be a disaster. The Krethax did not have many babies. Each cub was precious. "Keep monitoring them," Vexna said. "I will contact the council again and tell them we are still trying to find the problem." Before she could send the message, an alarm beeped. A small ship was approaching the station. Vexna looked at the screen and saw it was a human vessel. The name on the side said Wandering Star. The human pilot was asking permission to dock. He had a coolant leak and needed help. Vexna hesitated. Humans were new to the Galactic Union. They had only joined 5 years ago. Most species did not know much about them yet. Humans looked strange with their soft skin and small size, but station rules were clear. Any ship in trouble must be helped. "Give him permission to dock in Bay 3, Vexna told the control system. 30 minutes later, a human walked onto the station. His name was Jake Morrison. He was average height, with brown hair that looked messy and clothes that had been repaired many times. He carried an old toolbox and smiled at Vexna. "Thanks for letting me dock," Jake said. "My coolant line has a crack. Should be able to fix it in a few hours if you have some basic supplies." Vexna shook his hand. Humans like to touch hands when they met. It was a strange custom. "You may use Bay 3 for repairs. Let us know if you need anything." Jake went to work on his ship. Vexna returned to the control room to watch the cubs. That was when something impossible happened. The cubs stopped pacing. One by one, they went to their sleeping nests. They curled up and closed their eyes. Within 1 hour, all 12 cubs were in deep sleep. The monitors showed their brain patterns had finally entered the rest cycle they needed. Vexna stared at the screens. Her 4 hands started shaking. "Kill. Run a full diagnostic on all systems right now." Kill's body turned bright orange with surprise. "Running diagnostics. This is incredible. What changed?" The computer checked everything. The air in the habitat was the same. The temperature was the same. The sound levels were the same. Nothing had changed in the cubs' environment. But they were sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. "The only new variable is the human," Kill said slowly. "But that makes no sense. His ship is in a different section of the station. There is no way he could affect the cubs." Vexna looked at the timeline. Jake Morrison had docked exactly 90 minutes ago. The cubs had started settling down exactly 70 minutes ago. The correlation was impossible to ignore. "Check for any emissions from his ship," Vexna ordered. "Energy fields, radiation, chemicals, anything." Kill worked on the sensors for 20 minutes. Nothing. His ship is offline for repairs. No unusual emissions. No energy fields. The human is simply working with hand tools in the docking bay. For the next 3 hours, Jake fixed his coolant leak. For those same 3 hours, the cubs slept like they had not slept in months. Their vital signs were perfect. Their brain development was finally happening as it should. When Jake finished his repairs and prepared to leave, Vexna made a decision that surprised even herself. "Mr. Morrison, I have a request." she said as he packed his tools. "Would you be willing to stay on the station for a few more days? We will pay you well. We need to run some tests." Jake looked confused. "Tests on me? Is there something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong. But something very strange has happened since you arrived, and we need to understand it." Jake looked at her forearms, then at Kill's glowing crystalline body, then shrugged. "Sure, why not? The fertilizer run to Deneb can wait." "What kind of strange thing are we talking about?" Vexna led him to the observation window that looked into the habitat. Jake saw 12 large predators sleeping peacefully in their nests. "Those are Krathax cubs," Vexna explained. "They had not slept properly in 47 days. Then you arrived and they all fell asleep within an hour. We can detect no scientific reason for this change. The only new factor is you." Jake stared at the sleeping cubs. They were huge and covered in black shells with sharp claws. They looked very dangerous even while sleeping. "You think I made them sleep?" Jake asked. "That does not make any sense. I am just fixing a coolant leak. I have not gone near them." "We know," Kill said. "That is what makes this so strange. We detect no pattern, no energy from you, no chemicals, no sounds, nothing that should affect them. But the correlation is undeniable." Jake watched the cubs for a long moment. One of them made a soft rumbling sound in its sleep like a cat purring. "Well, this is the weirdest job offer I have ever gotten. But okay, I will stay. Let us figure out what is happening." Vexna felt relief wash over her. The Krathax Council would be very interested in this development. If this human could somehow help the cubs sleep, it might solve a crisis that had been growing for years. She just had to figure out how he was doing it. Jake Morrison spent the next day being studied like a lab animal. He did not mind too much because the pay was excellent, and the scientists were polite about it. They attached sensors to his head, his chest, and his arms. They asked him to walk around, to sit still, to talk, and to stay silent. They measured everything about him they could think of. Dr. Lissa Kemp was in charge of the biological tests. She was a Varan, which meant she looked like a giant moth with beautiful wings and large compound eyes. She could see more colors than humans could, and she was very gentle when she placed the sensors on Jake's skin. "We are trying to find what makes you special," Lissa explained in her soft, musical voice. "The cubs are still sleeping well. Every time you move closer to their habitat, they sleep deeper. When you move away, they become restless again." "That is really weird," Jake said. "I'm not doing anything. I am just walking around your station." "That is what makes this so difficult to understand," Lisa said. She looked at her screens and made a frustrated sound. "Your electromagnetic field is normal for a human. Your body temperature is normal. The chemicals you release into the air are normal. We cannot find anything unusual about you." Kill floated into the medical bay. His crystalline body was flashing red and purple. "I have compared his patterns to our entire database. Jake Morrison is a completely average human by all measurements, and yet the effect continues." Vexna arrived with more news. "The Krathax Council has contacted me. They want to know everything about this situation. I told them we are investigating." Jake sat up on the medical table. "Can I ask a question? Have the cubs always had trouble sleeping, or is this new?" Vexna's 4 hands moved in a gesture that meant she was thinking. "It has been getting worse over the past 5 years. At first we thought it was just stress from training, but now cubs at all our facilities are having the same problem. They pace all night. They fight with each other more. They cannot settle down." 5 years, Jake repeated. "That is about when humans joined the Galactic Union, right?" Kill's body flashed yellow. "That is correct. But humans have not visited Krathax facilities before you, so there cannot be a connection. Maybe not a direct connection," Jake said slowly, "but maybe the cubs can sense something is different in the galaxy now. I do not know. I'm just a cargo pilot. I am not a scientist." Lissa tilted her head in a way that meant she was interested. "Tell me about your job, Jake. What do you do all day?" Jake shrugged. "I haul cargo from one place to another. Fertilizer mostly, sometimes food supplies or machine parts. I spend a lot of time alone in my ship, reading books or watching old movies. It is pretty boring, actually." "Do you get scared when you are alone in space?" Lissa asked. "Not really. I grew up on a colony world. I am used to being around not many people. Space does not bother me. It is quiet and peaceful." Lissa's wings fluttered. "Peaceful? That is an interesting word. Do you feel peaceful right now?" Jake thought about it. "Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you are all running tests on me, which is a bit strange. But you are paying me well and everyone is nice. So yeah, I feel pretty relaxed. For the next several days, the science team tried different experiments. They had Jake sleep in different parts of the station. They had him eat different foods. They recorded the sound of his voice and played it near the cubs without Jake being present. Nothing worked except Jake himself actually being nearby. When Jake was in the observation deck next to the habitat, the cubs slept perfectly. When Jake went to the far side of the station, the cubs woke up and started pacing again within 2 hours. When Jake came back, they settled down. It is like they know he is here, Kill said, watching the monitors. But that should be impossible. They cannot see him through the walls. They cannot smell him through the air filtration. They should not be able to detect him at all. Jake started spending more time in the observation deck because he felt bad for the cubs. He would sit in a comfortable chair with his data pad and read books. Sometimes he would watch movies with his headphones on. He tried to be quiet so he would not disturb anyone. The cubs, when they were awake, started doing something strange. They would move to whichever side of their habitat was closest to where Jake was sitting. They did not try to attack him or threaten him. They just watched him through the thick glass walls. One morning, Jake was eating breakfast in the observation deck when he noticed all 12 cubs were sitting in a line, watching him eat. It was a bit creepy, but also kind of funny. "Good morning," Jake said to them, knowing they could not understand him. "Hope you all slept well." One of the cubs, the biggest one with a scar on his shell, made a clicking sound. It was not an angry sound. It was more like curiosity. Lissa saw this on the monitors and came running to the observation deck. This is new behavior. They have never shown interest in watching station personnel before. Maybe they are just bored, Jake suggested. I mean, they are kids, right? Even predator kids probably get bored sitting in a training habitat all day. They are not supposed to get bored, Lissa said. They are supposed to be practicing hunting and fighting. That is their instinct. But they are also supposed to sleep, and they were not doing that either, Jake pointed out. Maybe their instincts are getting confused somehow. That afternoon, Vexana called a meeting with all the senior staff. Jake was invited too, which made him feel a bit important. "I have been reviewing all the data," Vexana said. "We have found no measurable difference in Jake Morrison's biology or behavior that would explain the cubs' response to him. Yet the effect is real and repeatable. I propose we change our approach." "What do you mean?" Kel asked. "We have been looking for what Jake emits or produces," Vexana explained. "But what if it is not about what he does? What if it is about what he does not do?" Everyone in the room went quiet. Lisa's wings spread wide with excitement. "You mean we should compare him to threats instead of to other species?" "Exactly," Vexana said. "The cubs are predators. They are trained to detect danger. What if Jake is the first being they have encountered who registers as not dangerous?" Jake laughed at that. "Not dangerous? I am human. My species is pretty good at being dangerous when we need to be." "But you do not act dangerous," Lissa said thoughtfully. "You move slowly and calmly. Your voice is quiet. You do not make sudden movements. You do not display aggression or fear." "Well, yeah," Jake said. "Why would I?" "There is nothing here to be afraid of or angry about." Kill's body flashed green with understanding. That might be the key. You are genuinely calm, not pretending to be calm, not forcing yourself to be calm. You simply are calm. Vexana pulled up new data on her screens. "I am comparing Jake's movement patterns to the typical threat responses the cubs are trained to recognize. Predatory approaches have specific rhythms. Aggressive species have specific postures. Jake exhibits none of these patterns. More than that," Lisa added, "humans are pursuit predators. I researched this. On Earth, humans hunted by walking after prey for hours or even days until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Humans did not need to be fast or strong. They just needed to be patient and persistent. So the cubs see me as a predator," Jake said slowly, "but a different kind than they are used to, one that is not competing with them or threatening them." "Perhaps," Vexana said, "and perhaps that allows them to finally relax." Jake looked through the window at the 12 sleeping cubs. They looked peaceful now, their chest plates rising and falling with deep breaths. "Well, if just being myself helps them sleep," Jake said, "I guess I can keep doing that." News traveled fast in the Galactic Union. Within 2 weeks, everyone knew about the human who made Krethak's cubs sleep. Scientists from 20 different worlds sent requests to visit Sentinel-7 and study Jake Morrison. The station became more crowded than it had been in years. Jake found the attention embarrassing. He was just a cargo pilot who had gotten lucky with a coolant leak. But the Krethax Council was taking this very seriously. They sent a delegation to meet him in person. High Warrior Kreshtal was the leader of the delegation. He was enormous, even for a Krethax. His black shell had white scars from many battles. His claws were as long as Jake's fingers. When he walked into the observation deck, Jake felt very small. But Jake had learned something about himself over the past few weeks. He did not get scared easily. He stood up and offered his hand for a handshake the way humans did. Kreshtal looked at the small, soft hand for a long moment. Then he carefully touched it with one claw. "You are very brave or very foolish, human." "Maybe a bit of both," Jake said with a smile. "Nice to meet you, sir." The warrior made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "I have watched you through the monitors. You sit and read while 12 of our cubs sleep nearby. You know they could break through that glass if they really wanted to?" "I figured the glass was pretty strong," Jake said. "Plus, the cubs do not seem interested in hurting anyone. They just want to sleep." "That is the problem," Kreshtal said. "Our young have not been sleeping well for years now. Not just here, but at all 17 of our training facilities. Without proper sleep, their brains do not develop correctly. Our birth rate is already low. We cannot afford to have an entire generation fail to mature properly." Jake nodded slowly. "That sounds really serious." "It is why we are here," Kreshtal continued. "We want to hire you, Jake Morrison. We want you to work at our training facilities and help our cubs sleep." "Just me?" Jake asked. "You have 17 facilities. I can only be at one place at a time." "We know," said another member of the delegation, a Krethax named Shenra, who wore the markings of a scientist. "That is why we want to hire many humans. We will pay very well. We will provide housing and food. All you must do is be present near the cubs." Jake sat down in his chair, feeling overwhelmed. "You want to hire humans just to exist near your kids? Is that so strange?" Shenra asked. "Every job is paying someone to use their skills. Your skill appears to be that you are naturally calming to our young. But we do not know if other humans will have the same effect," Jake pointed out. "I might be unusual even for my species." Vexna, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "We have considered this. We propose to bring candidate humans here to Sentinel-7 and test whether they produce the same effect. If they do, we hire them. If they do not, they return home with payment for their time." "You are going to get a lot of people applying," Jake warned. "Humans love new jobs, especially ones that pay well and involve space travel." "Let them apply," Kreshtal said. "We will test each one. It may take time, but we have no other solution. Our cubs need help." Jake looked through the window at the sleeping cubs. In the past 2 weeks, he had started to feel protective of them. They were just kids, really. Big, dangerous kids with claws and shells, but still kids who needed to sleep. "Okay," Jake said. "I will help. But I want to be involved in choosing the other humans. I am not a scientist, but I might be able to spot people who have the right kind of calm that the cubs respond to." "Agreed," Kreshtal said immediately. "You will be our senior human consultant. You will help screen candidates and train those who are hired." And that was how Jake Morrison went from cargo pilot to the most unusual employment consultant in the galaxy. Over the next 3 months, 174 humans applied for the job. They came from all over human space. Some were young, some were old. Some had military training. Some had never left their home planets before. Jake met each one and watched how they behaved around the cubs. The results were surprising. About 1 in 4 humans produced the same calming effect that Jake did. The rest, despite being friendly and well-meaning, made no difference to the cubs at all. A former soldier named Paul Hayes was one of the successful candidates. He was tall and strong, with short gray hair and steady hands. He barely talked, just sat quietly and read books on military history. The cubs loved him instantly. "I do not understand why I work, but others do not," Paul said after his successful test. "I am not trying to do anything special." "That is exactly the point," Jake explained. "You are not trying. You are just comfortable being yourself. Some of the other candidates, they were trying too hard to be calm. They were nervous about being near the cubs. The cubs could sense that. Linda Shaw was another success. She was a retired teacher who had spent 40 years working with young children on Earth. She was small and round with white hair and a kind smile. She brought knitting needles and yarn to her test and sat in the observation deck making a sweater. "Oh, these babies just need someone who is not worried," Linda said when the cubs fell asleep around her. "They are acting tough because they think they have to. But deep down, they know they are not ready yet. They need permission to not be tough all the time." Jake thought that was the smartest thing anyone had said about the situation. The humans who did not produce the calming effect were disappointed but understanding. One young woman named Katie Lee said, "I really wanted this job, but I guess I am too anxious. I kept thinking about how the cubs could hurt me if they wanted to. I could not relax." "That is okay," Jake told her kindly. "This is a very specific job that needs a very specific type of person. It does not mean anything bad about you." By the end of the screening process, 47 humans had been hired. They were sent to the 17 Krathax training facilities, with 2 or 3 humans per facility. Jake spent his time traveling between facilities, checking on the humans and making sure everything was working correctly. At every facility he visited, the results were the same. The cubs slept better. They were calmer when awake. They got into fewer fights with each other. The development metrics improved dramatically. The Krathax Council was thrilled. High Warrior Kreshtal sent Jake a personal message. "You have saved a generation of our young. The Krathax people are in your debt." But Jake noticed something else that the Krathax had not mentioned yet. The cubs were not just sleeping better. They were changing their behavior in other ways too. At the facility on Krathax Prime, where Linda Shaw was stationed, Jake watched the cubs during their waking hours. They followed Linda around when she walked through the observation deck. They watched her knit. They made soft clicking sounds when she hummed old Earth songs. "They are learning from her," Jake said to the facility director, a Krathax named Veltor. "Learning what?" Veltor asked. "She is not teaching them to hunt or fight." "No," Jake agreed. "She is teaching them something else. She is teaching them how to be calm, how to do something quiet and peaceful without being afraid or aggressive. That is something cubs do not normally learn in your culture, right?" Veltor's claws tapped against his shell, a sign of deep thought. "Our culture values strength and aggression. We teach our young to always be ready for a fight. Perhaps that has been causing stress we did not recognize." "Maybe," Jake said. "Humans are predators too. But we learned a long time ago that you do not have to be aggressive all the time. You can be dangerous and calm at the same time. Maybe that is what the cubs are learning from us." Veltor sent a report to the council about this observation. Soon, researchers from other species were asking if humans could help with their young as well. The Torvan people, whose children had anxiety problems, requested human consultants. The Hexith, whose young were hyperactive, wanted to try the same program. Jake found himself in meetings with alien governments, explaining something he barely understood himself. "I cannot promise it will work for every species," he told a group of Torvan officials. "The cubs respond to us because of how our species evolved. We might not have the same effect on your children. We would like to try anyway," the lead official said. "What is the harm in testing?" Jake could not argue with that logic. Within 6 months, human calming consultants were working with 6 different species across the galaxy. It did not work for everyone, but it worked often enough that it became a real profession. Humans had found their niche in the galaxy, being peacefully present for species that had forgotten how to relax. 2 years after Jake Morrison first docked at Sentinel-7, the Galactic Union held a special conference. Scientists and officials from across the galaxy gathered to discuss what they were calling the human paradox. Jake was asked to give a speech which made him very nervous. He was still just a cargo pilot at heart, even if he now had a fancy title. The conference hall was huge. Beings from 100 different worlds filled the seats. Some had scales, some had fur, some were made of crystal or metal. Jake stood at the podium in his best clothes and looked out at all of them. "I am not a scientist," Jake started. "I am not a psychologist or a behavioral expert. 2 years ago, I was just a guy hauling fertilizer across space. Then my coolant line broke and everything changed. So I am going to tell you what I think is happening. But remember that I might be completely wrong." The audience was silent. "Waiting? You have all been trying to figure out what makes some humans special," Jake continued. "You have run every test imaginable. You have measured our brains and our bodies and our energy fields, and you have found nothing unusual. That is because you are looking for the wrong thing." Kill, sitting in the front row, flashed yellow with interest. "What should we be looking for?" "You should not be looking for anything," Jake said. "That is the whole point. The humans who work with the cubs are not doing anything. We are just being ourselves. Some of us are comfortable enough in our own skin that we do not feel the need to prove anything or defend anything or compete with anything. We just exist peacefully, and apparently that is what the cubs needed. Dr. Lissa Kemp raised one of her delicate wings. But why does this have such a strong effect? Many species can be peaceful, can they though? Jake asked. Really? I have been studying your cultures for 2 years now. Most of you come from societies where you always have to prove your worth. You have to show you are strong or smart or useful. You have to compete for status and resources. Even when you are being peaceful, you are doing it deliberately as a strategy. The audience stirred uncomfortably. Humans do that too sometimes, Jake admitted. We have our own problems with competition and status. But some of us, maybe because we grew up in quiet places or had calm families or just got lucky with our brain chemistry, we genuinely do not care about proving anything. We are content to just be, and I think that is what the cubs sense. Not that we are safe or friendly or weak. They sense that we are predators who are so secure in ourselves that we do not need to show it. High Warrior Kreshtal stood up from his seat. The huge Krethax warrior walked to the front of the hall and faced Jake. You are saying my people have made our young anxious by teaching them to always be strong? Jake felt nervous facing the massive warrior, but he had promised to be honest. Not exactly. Your culture values strength, and that is not wrong. But maybe cubs do not need to be strong every single moment. Maybe they need to know it is okay to rest sometimes, to not be on guard all the time. Humans can show them that because we evolved to be dangerous in a different way. Explain, Kreshtal demanded. Humans are pursuit predators, Jake said. On Earth we hunted by following prey for hours or days until the prey got too tired to run. We did not need to be fast or strong. We just needed to be patient and stubborn. We learned to be calm and persistent. We learned to save our energy and strike only when necessary. That kind of predator does not look dangerous until it is too late. The hall was completely silent now. The cubs sensed that. Jake continued. They sense something that is clearly a predator, but is not competing with them or threatening them. They sense something that is patient and calm and does not need to prove how dangerous it is, and for the first time in their lives they feel safe enough to sleep. A Thelion philosopher named Dexron spoke up. You are describing authenticity. The quality of being genuinely what you appear to be without pretense or performance. I guess so, Jake said. The humans who work with the cubs are not pretending to be calm. They are not forcing themselves to be peaceful. They just are those things naturally, and you cannot fake that. The cubs know the difference. Lissa Kemp stood and addressed the audience. I have been studying the developmental data from all facilities with human consultants. The cubs do not just sleep better. They also show improved social behavior, reduced aggression, and better emotional regulation. They are learning a new way of being from the humans. They are learning that you can be strong without being aggressive, Linda Shaw called out from her seat. The retired teacher had been invited to the conference too. They are learning that resting is not weakness. They are learning that you do not have to fight every moment of every day. Kreshtal turned to face the audience. The human Linda speaks truth. I have visited the facility where she works. I watched my people's cubs following her around, watching her knit fabric with tiny sticks. They were fascinated. They were calm. They were learning something we forgot to teach them. What did you forget? Someone in the audience asked. We forgot to teach them peace, Kreshtal said quietly. We taught them to hunt and fight. We taught them to be strong and fierce. But we never taught them that it is acceptable to simply be. The humans are teaching them this now. The conference continued for 3 more days. Scientists presented data showing the success rates of human consultants with different species. The results were mixed. Some species responded very well to human presence. Others showed no response at all. A few even became more agitated around humans. It appears the effect depends on the evolutionary background of the species, Kill explained during one presentation. Species that evolved as solitary predators respond well to humans. Species that evolved as pack hunters respond moderately. Species that evolved as prey animals often respond poorly. That makes sense, Jake said when asked for his opinion. Prey animals see humans as predators and get scared. Pack hunters see us as competition, but solitary predators recognize us as fellow apex beings who do not want their territory. We are not a threat, so they can relax. The conference ended with a formal recognition of the Human Calming Initiative, as it was now officially called. 47 humans were currently employed as consultants. The Galactic Union was funding research to understand the phenomenon better. Several species had requested more human consultants. Jake returned to Sentinel-7 feeling exhausted. Vexna met him at the docking bay. "You did well at the conference," she said with her four-armed version of a smile. "You explained something complex in simple terms that everyone could understand." "I just told them what I think is happening," Jake said. "I still do not really understand it myself." "Perhaps that is the key," Vexna suggested. "You do not overthink it. You simply are what you are." Jake went to the observation deck and sat in his usual chair. The 12 cubs were awake and immediately noticed his presence. They moved to the side of their habitat closest to him and settled down, watching him with their intelligent eyes. "Hey, kids," Jake said softly. "Did you miss me?" The largest cub, the one with the scar that Jake had mentally named Scar, made a gentle clicking sound. It was not a threat or a greeting. It was just acknowledgement. "You are here. We know you. We are safe." Jake pulled out his datapad and started reading a book. Within 20 minutes, all 12 cubs were asleep. The monitors showed their brain patterns were perfect. Their development was on track. They were going to grow up healthy and strong, but more than that, they were learning something new. They were learning that strength did not always mean aggression, that being a predator did not mean being angry all the time, that it was okay to rest and be peaceful. They were learning to be like the strange, soft humans who sat nearby and just existed calmly, not needing to prove anything to anyone. Jake smiled and kept reading his book. It was strange how life worked out sometimes. He had just wanted to fix a coolant leak. Now he was helping raise the next generation of apex predators from across the galaxy. But he was still just being himself, and apparently that was enough. 5 years had passed since Jake Morrison's coolant line broke near Sentinel-7. The Human Calming Initiative had grown far beyond anyone's expectations. Over 200 humans now worked as consultants across the galaxy. They helped not just Krethax cubs, but young from 6 other species as well. The program was considered one of the most successful cross-species cooperation efforts in Galactic Union history. Jake was now 43 years old. His hair had more gray in it, and he had laugh lines around his eyes from smiling at cubs for years. He still traveled between facilities, but he had made Sentinel-7 his home base. The station felt like home now, more than any planet ever had. The 12 cubs he had first helped were grown now. They had graduated from the training program and gone on to become full adults in Krethax society. Scar, the largest one, had become a warrior in the Krethax Defense Force. He still sent messages to Jake sometimes, short notes thanking him for helping when he was young. New cubs had taken their place at Sentinel-7. Jake knew all their names and personalities. There was Clicks, who made more noise than any other cub. There was Tiny, who was actually the biggest. There was Patches, whose shell had an unusual pattern. Jake loved them all, but today was special. Today, researchers from the Galactic Science Academy were presenting their final report on the human paradox. After 5 years of study, they were ready to explain what humans did that made such a difference to anxious young predators. Jake sat in the conference room at Sentinel-7 with Vexna, Kill, Lissa, and several other scientists. The lead researcher, a being made of flowing liquid named Zelfar, displayed charts and graphs on the screens. "We have conducted 4,247 individual tests over 5 years," Zelfar said in a voice like water running over rocks. "We have measured every possible variable: energy emissions, pheromone production, sound frequencies, movement patterns, electromagnetic fields, quantum fluctuations, and 73 other factors." "And what did you find?" Vexna asked. Zelfar's liquid form rippled in what might have been frustration. "Nothing. We found absolutely nothing that distinguishes effective human consultants from ineffective ones. No measurable pattern. No detectable mechanism. No scientific explanation for the phenomenon." The room went quiet. "So, after 5 years," Kill said slowly, his crystalline body flashing confused colors, "we still do not know how humans do this?" "Correct," Zelfar confirmed. "We know that it works. We have overwhelming evidence that certain humans produce a calming effect on specific species, but we cannot measure how they do it." Jake raised his hand like a student in school. "Can I say something?" "Of course," Zelfar said. "Maybe you are still looking for the wrong thing," Jake suggested. "You keep trying to find a mechanism, something we produce or emit. But what if there is no mechanism? What if it is just about being? Lys's wings spread wide. Explain what you mean. Jake thought about how to put it into words. Okay, so you know how some people just make you feel comfortable when they are around? And some people make you feel nervous even if they are not doing anything wrong? It is not about what they say or do. It is about who they are. That is too vague, Zelfar objected. Science requires measurable phenomena. But maybe this is not measurable, Jake argued gently. Maybe the Cubs sense something about us that cannot be detected by your instruments. Maybe they sense our intent, our nature, our way of being in the world. And maybe that is not something you can measure with sensors. Dexron, the Thelian philosopher who had attended the first conference, spoke up from his seat. The human Jake describes what philosophers call ontological authenticity, the quality of existing genuinely without performance or pretense. Perhaps this is what the Cubs detect. But how? Zelfar demanded. By what mechanism? Perhaps there is no mechanism, Dexron said calmly. Perhaps consciousness itself is the mechanism. The Cubs are conscious beings. Humans are conscious beings. Perhaps consciousness can perceive qualities in other consciousness that our instruments cannot measure. The scientists in the room looked uncomfortable. Science was supposed to measure things. The idea that something real could exist without being measurable was disturbing to them. But Jake understood. He had spent 5 years watching Cubs respond to humans. He had seen which humans worked and which did not, and he had never been able to explain the difference in scientific terms. Some people just had a quality of calm authenticity that Cubs trusted. Others did not. You could see it, feel it, know it, but you could not measure it. Look, Jake said, I know this is frustrating for you, but maybe some things are just like this. Maybe you have to accept that it works even if you do not understand why. Vexana tapped her 4 hands together thoughtfully. The practical applications are undeniable. Cubs develop better with human consultants present. That is all that matters from a policy perspective. But from a scientific perspective, it is deeply unsatisfying, Zelfar said. I know, Jake said sympathetically, but sometimes life is like that. After the meeting, Jake went to the observation deck as he did every day. The Cubs were awake and playing, which meant they were mock fighting and making a lot of noise. When Jake sat down in his chair, they all paused and looked at him. Then one by one they settled down into resting positions. They were not asleep yet, but they were calm. Just being near Jake made them feel safe enough to stop the constant activity and just breathe. Linda Shaw, who had taken a position at Sentinel-7 2 years ago, sat down next to Jake with her knitting. Did the scientists figure it out? Nope, Jake said with a small smile. They have no idea how we do it. Good, Linda said, her needles clicking together as she worked. Some things should stay mysterious. Makes life more interesting. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The Cubs watched them both, their fierce eyes tracking the movement of Linda's knitting needles. Tiny made a soft rumbling sound almost like a purr. You know what I think? Linda said eventually. I think the Cubs needed to meet beings who were strong without being violent, who were confident without being aggressive, who were dangerous without being angry. They needed to know that was possible. And humans are like that? Jake asked. Some of us are, Linda said. The ones who work here, anyway. We are all people who figured out how to be comfortable with ourselves. We do not need to prove anything or win anything or dominate anything. We are just content to be alive and do our thing. That is a pretty good way to live, Jake observed. It is the only way to live if you ask me, Linda said firmly. All that competing and fighting and proving yourself, it just makes everyone tired and anxious. Better to just be yourself and let everyone else be themselves. The Cubs were all sleeping now. Their breathing had synchronized, rising and falling together like waves. Jake and Linda's presence had given them permission to stop being fierce predators for a while and just be young ones who needed rest. Paul Hayes came into the observation deck carrying a book on ancient Earth history. He nodded to Jake and Linda, then sat down in his usual chair on the other side of the room. Within minutes, the Cubs shifted slightly, unconsciously moving so they were between all 3 humans, surrounded by calm presences on all sides. This was what the program had become. Humans who were genuinely comfortable in their own skin, sitting near young predators and teaching them by example that you could be strong and peaceful at the same time. It was not a job exactly. It was more like a way of being that happened to help others. Jake thought about his life before the coolant leak. He had been lonely. hauling cargo through empty space, not really connecting with anyone. Now he had a family of sorts, human colleagues who understood him, alien cubs who trusted him, a purpose that mattered, and all because he had broken down at exactly the right place and time. Vexana entered the observation deck quietly. She looked at the 3 humans sitting peacefully while 12 apex predators slept safely nearby. "The Galactic Science Academy may never understand this," she said softly. "But I do. You are teaching our children something we forgot. You are teaching them that peace is not weakness." "We are not teaching anything," Jake said. "We are just being ourselves." "Exactly," Vexana said. "And that is the lesson." Years later, when humans had spread across the galaxy and were known for many things, this would be remembered as one of their greatest gifts. Not their technology or their military strength or their art, but their ability to be genuinely calm in a universe full of anxiety. Their ability to exist peacefully in their own skin without needing to prove anything to anyone. The monitors never did detect a pattern. The scientists never did find a mechanism, but the cubs slept easily, and that was all that mattered. The human had arrived, and somehow that was enough.